Are you suffering from a meniscus tear in your knee and you're looking for ways to help it heal faster? If you are, then this video is perfect for you. Hi everybody, my name is Will Harlow and I'm the Over-Fifties Specialist Physio here at HT Physio in Farnham. And today I'm going to be revealing 8 ways you can help your meniscus tear to heal faster. Now, before we dive into the content of the video, if you haven't already, please hit like on the video and subscribe to the channel using the link in the bottom right, because then you'll be the first to hear about our new knee pain videos as soon as they come out. Now that that's been said, let's talk about meniscus tears and how you can help them to heal faster. So a meniscus tear is an injury to the knee, and to help me explain, I've got my knee model here, and in the model we've got the thigh bone at the top here, we've got the kneecap, the patella at the front, and we've got the shin bone or the tibia here. And the knee basically moves like this. You bend your tibia down and then you extend, which gives you that locking out knee movement. And obviously you can see how the two bones are quite close to each other here in the middle. So to separate them, we've got 2 types of cartilage. We've got what we call the hyaline cartilage, which sits on top of the bones. But then we've also got this second type of cartilage here called the meniscus. And the meniscus cartilage is like a shock absorber. It's made of a different type of cartilage that we call fibrocartilage. And it basically works to stop the forces transmitting up through the shin into the thigh bone when we walk, when we jump, when we run, and when we move around. Now, the meniscus is quite a clever structure. It's very effective at its job. But the problem with it is that as we start to get a bit older, the meniscus tends to lose some of its water. Okay, so it dries out. Now, when the meniscus is drier, it also becomes more brittle. Now, the other problem with the meniscus is it's very tightly attached to the top of the shin bone, okay? Which means that when we twist, it really doesn't have anywhere to go. So if the meniscus is brittle and then you twist, it's prone to tearing. Now, there are 2 types of meniscus injury that we think of in the clinic. The first type is an acute injury, and an acute injury is caused by a specific twist or a specific movement, and it often starts with sudden pain or pain that begins the next day. Now, typically acute meniscus tears cause quite a lot more pain. They cause swelling, they cause giving way, and sometimes they cause locking of the knee as well. And then the second type of meniscus injury is what we call a degenerative meniscus tear. And these tears are smaller. They tend to start slowly over time. So it could be that you noticed your knee pain develop over a period of a month or 2 months. And they tend to cause more of an achy sensation, but it can get worse and worse and worse. And again, start to affect walking and sometimes cause giving way of the knee as well. Now, the problem with meniscus injuries is because the blood flow inside the knee to the meniscus is actually very poor, they take a long time to heal. So I have a lot of people who come to see me to say, I know I've got this meniscus tear, but it's just taking ages to get better. Is there anything I can do to make it heal faster? Now, the answer is yes, and I'm going to reveal those things in a moment. But the first thing to understand is that even if you're doing all the right things, a meniscus injury typically takes quite a long time to heal. It's not uncommon for a meniscus injury to take between 3 and 12 months to get better. So if you're still suffering within that first year, I'm afraid that sometimes that's just par for the course and it can take that long to get better. Now, that being said, there are ways to significantly speed up the process, so let's talk about those now. So the first way to help your meniscus injury to get better faster is to avoid twisting. Now, this is the most obvious one because menisci, as I said, they're very tightly bound down, so when you twist, they've got nowhere to go. And if you can imagine, every time you twist on your knee, if that meniscus tear is trying to knit back together, with each twist, you're pulling those fibers apart. So a lot of people are finding that if they're careless, if they're moving around, if they're getting up off a chair and twisting straight away, every time they do that, they're just setting their recovery back by a little bit. And if you do that for months and months on end, it's no surprise that the meniscus is not getting better. So I tell my clients in the clinic to make sure that all their movements are in a straight line if they can. You don't need to become a robot, but try not to do any unnecessary twisting with your foot planted on the floor. This is going to help it to settle faster and help the meniscus to knit back together without being interrupted by unnecessary twisting. Now, the second tip builds on that point, and that is to stop using your foot to move things along the ground. Now, I'll tell you a funny story, well, not really funny for the person involved, but I had a guy who I was working with who was in his mid-50s. He worked at a warehouse and he had a meniscus tear, and we were trying for weeks and weeks to get it better, but it just wasn't improving. Now, in the end, I said, let's talk very specifically about your daily work schedule. What are you doing at work? And he said, well, I carry boxes around. I have to take big boxes from one side of the warehouse to the other. And then he said, I can carry 2 boxes in my hands, but I can take a third box if I push it along the floor with my foot. So he was doing this multiple times a day, moving a box along the floor by pushing with his foot. And this is quite a heavy box, and every time he's pushing it with his foot, he's putting a rotational force up through the knee. So he's effectively twisting his knee. So I said, well, let's just try for a trial. Stop that third box along the floor. I appreciate you're going to have to make more trips to and from, but it should help it to get better faster. And just like magic, it started to improve pretty quickly because he was stopping moving things along the floor. Now, this is quite an extreme example, but I see it happen all the time with average people as well. They might think, oh, I'll just push the bin to one side with my foot, or you know what it's like when you've got your hands full and you try and shut the door with your hand or open the door with your foot, sorry. It can end up aggravating the meniscus and delaying healing. So stop doing things with your foot, especially the foot on the injured side and even on the uninjured side, because if you're standing on one leg on the bad one, again, that's often putting a twist through the knee and aggravating it. So stop using your foot to move things to help that meniscus heal faster. Now, the third tip to help your meniscus injury to heal faster is to sleep at night with a pillow between your knees. Now, obviously, this is most relevant for people who sleep on their side, but if you sleep on your back, you can also find benefit from putting a pillow under your knees. Now, the reason the pillow trick works well is because when we're asleep on our side, one leg is falling over the top of the other leg. And if it's your bad leg that's on the top, that thigh falling over the midline rotates the thigh and again puts a twisting force on the meniscus. If you put a pillow between your knees, what you're basically doing is just shifting your thigh back to parallel, which takes the rotational force off the meniscus and helps it get better quicker. Now, if you're on your back and you have a pillow underneath your knee, you're just taking it out of that max extension position and again taking some pressure off the meniscus, which again should help it heal a bit quicker. So use a pillow at night between your knees or under your knee to help the problem improve faster. Now, the fourth tip to help your meniscus injury get better quicker is to continue walking. Now, a lot of people ask me with their meniscus tear, it hurts a bit to walk, should I stop? And the answer for the majority of people is no, you should continue walking, but just within a comfortable realm if you can. Now, obviously, walking can sometimes irritate a meniscus injury, but if the pain is bearable, for most people the case is you're getting more benefit from the walking than you are delaying the healing, if that makes sense. So obviously get individual advice for this because everyone's going to be different, but for the vast majority of cases, it makes sense to continue walking. When we keep walking, what we're doing is we're keeping the muscles strong, we're keeping the joint flexible, and we're also encouraging blood flow to the meniscus, which again is going to help it to heal faster. So unless you absolutely have to, or it's not safe to walk anymore, or your doctor told you to stop, you should continue walking even if you have a meniscus tear. Now, the fifth tip to help the meniscus heal faster is to keep the knee moving, but to not lock the knee out. Now, when you're sat down and resting, it can feel tempting to just keep the knee as still as possible. But if you do that, what you'll probably find is when you start moving again, it's very, very stiff. It feels almost ratchety. You might find it's catching. It could take 5 minutes to warm it back up. And basically what's happened is you've remained still for too long, so the knee has started to seize up a bit. And this happens a lot for people with meniscus tears. So what I recommend people do If they're sat down resting at home, they have the weight off the knee, but they just keep straightening and bending it just a few times every half an hour, just to keep the blood flowing, to stop it from getting stiff. And you'll find you won't have as much what we call start-up pain when you start moving again. Now, the thing I would recommend people avoid doing with a meniscus injury is locking the knee out entirely. So when you maximally extend the knee, okay, so if you're sitting and you really straighten that knee as hard as you can, what you're doing is you're basically getting the two ends of the bone quite close to each other when you extend. And if you have a meniscus tear, what that can do is it can pinch on the tear. Now, this doesn't happen for everyone, so if your therapist has told you otherwise, then please listen to them. But for many people, if you lock the knee out, it is going to pinch the meniscus injury. So avoid locking the knee out, but do keep the knee moving. Now, the sixth tip to help your meniscus tear get better quicker is to keep the quads strong. Now, the quads are the muscles that live at the front of your thigh. I'll show you here. These are the quads. They live at the front of the thigh, and they're incredibly important for knee health. The reason they're so important is because they live here. They are responsible for what we call extension of the knee. So they keep the knee straight. And if they're weak, what we get is giving way of the knee. So many people who have their knee giving way from time to time are suffering with the symptoms of weak quads. So keeping your quads strong will help to A, support the knee, but it will also prevent that sensation of giving way. Now, there are lots of different ways to strengthen the quads. The best quad strengthening exercises are going to be different for everyone, but some of the best ways to improve them are straight leg raises. You can use exercises like the bridge. You can extend your knee when you're sitting, and you can use movements like sit to stands and mini squats as well. Those tend to be the 5 biggest ones I use for my clients with meniscus injuries. There will be another video on my channel very soon about how to get stronger quads, so subscribe to the channel and look out for that in the coming weeks. Now, the 7th tip to help your meniscus injury heal faster is to maintain flexibility in some of the key muscle groups in the legs. Now, the key muscle groups in the legs to keep flexible when you've got a meniscus injury are your quads, which live at the front of the thigh, your hamstrings, which live at the back of the thigh, and your calf muscle, which lives at the back and the bottom of the leg. Now, these muscles are important for meniscus health for one particular reason, and that's because they all cross over the knee joint. So your quads start up here and they cross over via the patella to attach to the shin bone, the tibia. Your hamstrings start up here and they cross over the back of the knee and attach to either the tibia or the fibula, depending on which hamstring we're talking about. So they cross past the knee too. And your calf runs in the opposite direction. So it starts on the heel bone and it comes up and it attaches to the femur at the top. Now, because all of these muscles have the knee joint somewhere in between them, if they're tight, they end up compressing the knee joint and they can make any pinching or compression on the meniscus feel worse. So keep those muscles flexible if you want to relieve some of the pressure on the knee joint and help that meniscus heal faster. And then the 8th and final tip to help your meniscus injury heal faster is to use heat on the knee. Now, heat is a very clever thing to use when you've got a meniscus injury. Obviously, this advice only applies after the first few days when the swelling has gone. But what we're trying to do with heat is 2 things. The first thing we're trying to do is we're trying to bring blood flow to the knee. And heat is very good at doing that because what it does is it opens up the blood vessels around the area that gets warm and encourages more blood flow, which means we should have a better blood supply to the meniscus itself, so it should heal a bit quicker. And then the second thing that heat does is it improves stiffness around the knee. So if you can imagine the capsule around your knee joint and the muscles around your knee joint are almost like plastic. So if they're cold, they're very, very stiff. And if they're warm, they're quite flexible. That's almost what we're doing when we apply heat to the knee. We're warming those structures up and we're directly making them more flexible. So if you're suffering with stiffness as part of your meniscus tear, this will help it get better as well. So what we recommend people do is if they've got a meniscus injury on the inside of the knee, you get a warm compress or a hot water bottle or a wheat cushion that's warmed up in the microwave, and you put it on the knee. You keep it there as long as the skin's comfortable for 15 minutes at a time, and you do that several times a day. And there's no real limit to how often you can do that. The more you do it, the better. Now, what I will say is some people say, well, does deep heat do the same thing? And the answer is no. Deep heat is a chemical, so what it does is it just makes the skin feel warm, but it doesn't give you any of the direct benefits of heat. It might have some pain relieving effects for some people, but the effects we're trying to get from proper heat need real heat rather than the deep heat creams. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Let's just have a quick recap of the tips I've delivered to you there. So the first tip is to avoid twisting. The second tip is to stop using your foot to move things along the floor. The third tip is to use a pillow at night time between your knees. The fourth tip is to continue walking. The fifth tip is to keep the knee moving but not lock it out. The sixth tip is to keep your quads strong. The seventh tip is to maintain flexibility in the key muscles of the legs. And the eighth tip is to use heat on your knee to improve blood flow and stiffness. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you found this video useful. If you have, please leave a comment below and let us know. And if you want to get more from me, you can pick up a copy of my book. It's called Thriving Beyond 50 and it has loads more tips, tricks and advice like the stuff in this video here. You can find it on Amazon using the link below the video. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for watching. I look forward to speaking to you on the next one.